Hello, my miraculous friend, and welcome to another episode of the Magnify Your Miracles podcast. This is Reverend Frances Faden, and I'm so grateful that we get to spend this time together helping you magnify your miracles. And today, you are in the right place. If you have ever been told that you have an incurable condition, if you've been told by your doctor that you have an autoimmune disease and you're just going to have to learn to live with it, and if you've been praying for an answer to whatever's going on, this is the episode for you. I have the great honor and privilege of being able to introduce you to somebody who's really helped me without knowing that she's helped me to heal from some things that I've had since childhood. And I'm so honored to be able to share with you this amazing protocol and this person who I think is an earth angel. So before we do any of that, let's take a deep breath together. We always take a breath just so that we can get ourselves grounded and centered and really present so that we can receive what the universe is about to bring to us. And knowing that you're going to hear whatever you need to hear to help you magnify your miracles, let's take one more deep breath in gratitude. And we can begin. All right, my friend. Well, I'm so excited to introduce you to Dr. Brooke Goldner. I want to tell you a little bit about her and her miraculous story. She is a board-certified medical doctor and the author of multiple best-selling books, including Goodbye Lupus, Goodbye Autoimmune Disease, and her recently released recipe book, Goodbye Lupus, Hello Delicious. She's been featured in multiple documentaries like Disease Reversal Hope and Eating You Alive, and television shows like the Hallmark Home and Family Show, and has been on the front cover of Vegan Health and Fitness magazine 3 times, including the cover of Fit Over 40. She graduated from Carnegie Mellon University with honors for genetic research in leukemia and neurobiology, graduated from Temple University School of Medicine, and was chief resident at UCLA Harbor Residency. She's published multiple case studies in fully reversing lupus and Sjogren's diseases and lupus nephritis with her nutrition protocol that we're going to be talking about today. She is the sole autoimmune professor for the plant-based nutrition certification from Cornell University and a member of the Forbes Health Advisory Board. Dr. Goldner has dedicated her life to educating the public, physicians, and testifying to government committees to improve health through better understanding of the nutrition that optimizes cellular function, repair, and immunity that has saved her life and thousands of others around the world. Oh my goodness. Dr. Goldner, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much.
I'm so grateful to have you here. You don't know it, but I have been following your protocol myself, my own version of it, and I was able to say goodbye to lifelong anemia.
Oh, that is so cool. I love when an interview starts like that.
Yep, lifelong.
That is really
ever
great.
since they tested me, ever since I was little, because I just had such absorption problems from celiac, which then developed into microscopic colitis. And I started your protocol about October of last year, almost a year, very, very slowly. And I just got my blood test done last month, and I was like, ah, goodbye anemia, no more.
Your body knew how to do it. It just needed the help to get there. Congratulations.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. So I always like to ask all of my guests, and this is a great question for you. What is your definition of a miracle?
Oh, wow. My definition of a miracle. I feel like my whole world is about miracles.
I know.
Um, it's, See, I'm one of those people that I, uh, I live my life constantly in awe, and I highly recommend it. So things that most people consider, like I consider everything miraculous.
Yeah.
I just flew on a plane last weekend and I'm looking out the window. This is a miracle. Like we're in the air. Everything people are used to, I still insist on being in awe. But typically people consider miracles something that is supposed to be something that can't happen, something
Right.
that you're told cannot happen, something that experts will say can't happen. And so people come to believe that something's impossible. And yet, when the impossible suddenly becomes possible, they call that a miracle.
Absolutely. And I know you know all of that firsthand from your own
Absolutely.
experience of having experienced miracles and being able to help other people experience them as well. And I would love for you to, and I know you've shared it many times, but I would love for you to share some of your story. We were just talking before the interview that we're both from Long Island. Coincidentally, our families both had the same personal chef, Chef Boyardee. And both
Yes,
ended up
I
with
grew up with
problems
that
as
chef.
teenagers, right? So tell people who don't know, how did you discover at such a young age that you had lupus
Mhm.
and that the miraculous way that you were able to heal yourself from that?
So it was no one in my family had lupus or autoimmune that we were aware of. And so it wasn't something that we expected. It was pretty shocking. Started getting health issues probably around, I'd say in the 12 to 14 range was when I started to get migraines. And they were extremely intense. Like literally, if one hit me and we were out, my mom would have to drive me home while pulling over so I could vomit on the side of the road. Like I would get extremely sick. And then I'd be in bed for days just crying and in pain. And so there was migraines in the family, and they took me to the doctors and they did all the scans and the tests. And my dad liked to joke, New York humor, right? That scathing or he'd say, well, they confirmed you have a brain, but can't find anything wrong with you, right? And so they gave me medicines for pain, and that was it. And then by the time I was 16, I started getting other types of pain. So I started getting arthritis in my joints, and I didn't know it was arthritis at the time. I'd never experienced such serious pain before, separate from migraines, where, my shoulder hurt so badly, I felt like I couldn't even raise my own hand to feed myself.
Yeah.
And the weird thing about the pain was typically most folks, if you have a pain, you injured yourself. So I'd go, oh, it's because I was in volleyball yesterday. I must have done something when I was playing volleyball. I mostly sat bench for volleyball, but I trying to figure out what did I do. And then the very next day, I can feed myself fine. That shoulder's fine, but I can't lift my left arm. And then I'd sit there thinking I was crazy. Was it always the left? It can't move from one to the other, but I don't eat with my left. And it was so perplexing. And I wasn't sure what was going on. But when it started to come and go and move around, I would mention it to my mom. She would take me to the doctor. The miracle doctor effect, when you show up at the office and whatever you had isn't there.
Yes. Yes, I do know that.
I would show up and they couldn't see anything. My tests still looked normal. I'm not sure what they were testing back then. This was back when there were paper charts. And I've called to see if I could get my old charts, and they destroy them after 10 years, or else they would have like storage units just full of old charts. So I don't know what they tested, but whatever they tested, they didn't find anything. And it started to get worse. And then finally, one day I was out with my friend out in the sun all day, which I later found out can be a trigger for lupus and autoimmune diseases. And I came home and had the worst migraine. I'm throwing up. And I come out of the bathroom and I had this rash across my face that was really bright red. And my knees are swollen, and I just must have looked like garbage. And my dad went, all right, something's very, very wrong. They called my primary care doctor. She said, meet me in the ER. And when she saw all of it, the rash across my face, which they call a butterfly rash, very typical for lupus, the swollen joints, I'm throwing up in pain. She said, I think this could be lupus, which actually made my mom mad. She told me recently she was pissed when she heard that. She said, I've been taking you to the doctor for 2 years, and they didn't know. And then all of a sudden they're going to give you this terrible diagnosis. So she was like, no, she doesn't. You don't get to do that. No. But they ran all the tests and they confirmed that I did have lupus. And in addition, the test showed that actually my kidneys were failing, which was completely painless. I had no pain in my kidneys. The pain was in my knees, my shoulders, my fingers. So a couple of days after that, I'm getting a biopsy for my kidneys to find out what's going on with my kidneys. And then a few days after that, we ended up seeing the nephrologist, which is the kidney doctor, who happened to also be from New York, even though I was in Pennsylvania at the time. And he laid it right out for us and said, listen, I mean, she's in really serious trouble. This is very severe. And the type of kidney failure she has, it's called lupus nephritis, is inflammation of the kidneys from lupus. There's different types. The kind that I have is the most difficult to say, membranoproliferative. Membranoproliferative. And membranoproliferative nephritis is the most aggressive type of nephritis. And he said, with meds as usual, which this was over 30 years ago, with meds as usual, she's got about 6 months. We went 6 months for what? 6 months to live. At best, dialysis. But she might not make it to then, which, I mean, it was just shocking, to go from, okay, I've got some aches and pains, to they're giving me 6 months to live. And this was his preamble to suggesting experimental treatments, which everyone wants to be experimented on, right? Doctors, right? But when it's presented to you that way, it's a pretty easy decision. We can give you the meds we give everyone else, and we'll see you at dialysis, or we can try what's behind this curtain over here. And what they suggested, which we ended up doing, was using chemotherapy, which at the time was being used for cancer. But one of the side effects of giving people chemotherapy for cancer is that their immune system stops working. Before COVID happened, if you saw someone in a mask outside, out and about, they were on chemotherapy and they had no immune system, most likely, because they could die from the flu. They don't have an immune system. So the doctors at the time were thinking, if we intentionally did that to someone with lupus, where their own immune system is attacking their organs, maybe we can save the organs. And so they didn't know how much to give at the time or how long to give it. Now, usually people get 3 to 5 treatments over a few months. I got it for 2 years straight. Every time they tried to stop the chemo, my kidneys would start to go down again. They'd go to put it back and they'd start to get better again. And so 2 full years. So from 16 to 18, I took 7 pills a day. I took high doses of steroids. I took medications to prevent puberty from progressing, because the chemotherapy could also cause ovarian cancer and make me sterile and all these different things. So I was on medicines to prevent puberty, and I was also getting the chemotherapy, and then I was on medicines for the side effects of all the other medicines.
Right.
So, and then I finished high school, and I came from a family where my mom came on a boat into New York Harbor, and they were immigrants that were refugees from World War II. So when my grandmother was 16, she was in a prison camp, still, who was way worse off than me with lupus, where I got to go home in my bed and be surrounded by my family and had doctors to take care of me. So because of who was raising me, I always still felt very lucky. Even though I had this diagnosis, I never really believed or accepted that I was dying. It just didn't. I don't know if it's just the naivety of a 16-year-old that can't face existential threat, or whether it was some kind of knowing, or whether it was just the most convenient thing to believe, because believing the opposite would be devastating. But it just never accepted it into my heart or my soul that this was deadly, that I wasn't going to get through it. And my family, they made sure that I was getting that same message. There was never a question, are you going to finish high school or take a break? Are you going to go to college? None of that. It was, we don't get to choose what happens to us, but we can choose our way through. And we focus on what we can do. We listen to our doctors and we plan for the future. And you're going to do something important, you got to focus on that. So that's what I did. And that's what kept me going. I believed in my future. I wanted to live a life that had meaning, even more so at that point, because once you hear that there could be a limit on your lifespan, I don't know, everything is a bit sweeter to me. Other folks would get depressed and give up, but to me it was, well, I don't know how much life I'm going to live. I'm going to get everything I can. I'm going to laugh. I'm going to love. I'm going to achieve. I'm going to live with more purpose and passion than anyone would normally live with for however long I get. So whatever time I get was worth it. And that's what I did. And that's what got me through all of that. The help of my doctors, the love of my family, and the belief in myself and my life, and the persistence and focus on my passion and what made me feel lucky.
Yeah. So you actually had lupus and you went to medical school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you're sick with autoimmune disease, they say always make sure that you avoid the sunlight, avoid stress, and get enough sleep. Well, medical students don't go outside, so there was no sunlight, and that was fine. But right. Avoiding stress and getting enough sleep was not on the menu, and the doctors don't care about your diagnosis. When you're in medical school, in college, I could say, I have lupus. Doing 4 finals in one day might not be good for me because I need to sleep, or I'm going to wake up in a flare. And they'd go find 2 tests on one day, 2 tests on the other. Medical school, there was no special treatment, and you had to work the same hours as everyone else. And when I went to medical school, there was no limit legally on how long they could work us.
I know.
So I was working 100-hour weeks with lupus, and it did make me sick. I was able to keep my remission going in college. I was in a remission at the end of my 2 years of chemo. Still had lupus. All of my lab tests proved that I had lupus. I still had joint pain, but I could just take medicine for that. I could not. Yeah. When Celebrex was the only thing that worked for me, and at the time Celebrex was taken off the market temporarily because it was causing heart problems, I took every sample out of my rheumatologist's office. I'm like, I cannot live without Celebrex. So, even though I was, quote, in remission, I still needed medicine for my joint pain. I still need medicine for my migraines. but I didn't need chemotherapy. My kidneys were stable, and that was considered remission. In autoimmune disease, remission means you're not currently dying, you are stable.
Right.
And I was able to maintain that by sleeping and taking care of myself through college. But medical school, yeah, I got a relapse. Kidneys stayed the same, which always showed some injury. There was protein in my urine, which you should never have, but that happens to people with kidney issues. I was told that was permanent, but I started getting blood clots, and blood clots were going into my brain and causing my vision to go double vision, and I'd have to hold on to the wall while the world came back together, and ended up getting MRIs and finding out that it was causing mini strokes, as we call them, and then was put on blood thinners for the rest of my life, they said at the time, so that I wouldn't have a major stroke or pulmonary embolism and die once again. So, and that's the life with lupus or other autoimmune diseases, is you fix one problem and then there's a new problem. It's like the cartoons where there's, a hole in the boat and they plug it up, and then there's the guys are on the other side and they plug it up. And so when everything's quiet, you try to enjoy yourself, and then you look up and there's another thing. And that was just how it was. And as long as there was an answer, I still was grateful. Like, okay, it sucks to give myself shots every day. I hated giving myself injections every day. But if I could do that, finish medical school and take my residency and become a doctor, I'm grateful. I just was always glad there was an answer. Yeah. And rather than think of myself as someone who was always doomed to be sick, I started calling myself the comeback kid, because I always scared the crap out of my family and my doctors by getting really sick, but I always made a comeback and I always got through it. And I just decided that that's who I was, that no matter whatever happened, I'd find a way to make a comeback. And that's how I stayed positive and continued to enjoy my life. I believed that I would always make it through, and I kept focusing on what made me feel fulfilled, which was practicing medicine.
Yeah. I love that story. It's like, oh my God. So I don't know of anybody who has a story quite like yours, where it's so dramatic that, like, wow, you were really sick.
Yes.
And then along comes a gentleman that you happen to meet one day, and your whole life changes.
Yes. All of a sudden, I just heard the Brady Bunch theme song in my head. Then one day, this lady met this fellow. Yeah. So it's whenever people say, how much they love my story, I always think, but it's not a story. This is my life. But it is remarkable. When I take a step back and go, this is, if you saw it in the movie, you go, no. I was stable once again, taking medication, injecting myself with blood thinners, and able to continue. I worked through the blood clot episodes. I never took a day off. I actually started seeing a hematologist in the hospital. Wow. So I could go get my checkup, get my labs drawn. They would adjust my medicines, and then I'd go see the next patient. I just kept going. But I was happy to be stable. I was happy to be able to continue going. I'd already gotten accepted to my first choice of residency. I was moving from the East Coast all the way to the palm trees on the West Coast to go to UCLA Harbor. They had a special program. UCLA main campus is where the celebrities go to get their treatment. The Harbor campus is where we treated the homeless and the uninsured. And I've always just wanted to take care of people that everyone else kind of left out and ignored. And that's always where my heart was. That's what I was planning to do. And what I did for a while was working with the homeless and people coming out of foster care and juvenile justice and stuff like that. So I was so thrilled, so excited. And I met Thomas, who we had both gone to Carnegie Mellon together, but we didn't really know each other. We had noticed each other. I thought he was the most handsome guy on campus, hands down. We were a nerdy school, and then there's this handsome, muscular guy walking around who's supposed to be a computer science and math major. Yeah. I noticed. He actually dated my sorority sister, who, it's kind of funny, my height, became a doctor. A tall, thin brunette who became a doctor. He has a type, okay. But so he had noticed me as well, but we never talked. We were dating other people, but we visually had imprinted, you'll say. And it's funny, actually, he dated someone who became a doctor, and then the person I was dating at the time was a computer science guy. So it was like we almost got it. So I had recognized him when I was out and hit on him immediately. And told you, I have that energy. I learned at 16, life is short. You don't waste a moment. When McDreamy's sitting there, you go over.
Yeah.
I pulled the line of, don't I know you? And so, and what was cool was he had actually switched from computer science and mathematics and had become obsessed with exercise science. First as a personal hobby, and then it just grew from there. And he was getting his master's in exercise science. And his obsession was actually on the aesthetics. He believed there must be a correct way for humans to eat so every human can have a six pack and be muscular all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That there must be an optimal way for our species to eat. And he was looking purely at the aesthetics. At this point, he was training people at the #1 personal training studio in the state, or at least in Pittsburgh. He was being hired by MTV to train people getting ready for their music videos who needed a six pack in a few weeks. So he was really honed in on that aspect of it. And had been frustrated that, unlike computer science and math, biologists didn't use algorithms. You'd say, what is the optimal nutrition to create rapid fat loss? And they didn't know. These PhDs in biology, and they go high fat, low carb, and what, we're one species. There's one optimal way. Our cell structures are the same. Our organelles and all of these different physiology should be working the same way. What do you mean? So he said, I'm going to figure it out then. And so he applied this mathematical mind of his to nutrition and biology, because he said in math and computer science, there's always a most elegant answer. There's a most elegant algorithm where and there's always a correct answer. Every time you do this, you get this result. If you're getting different results, it's not the right algorithm. And that's just not how biologists think. I did genetic research. I'm a biologist and a chemist. I've worked through all that. We don't think that way. And so it was really fascinating when I met him to see what he had discovered and how well it worked. And so I had asked him to put me on this nutrition plan because he wanted to marry me. I mean, we were within a few weeks of dating, we already knew we were getting married. It was kind of just known. When people say, they ask proposal story, he proposed to me after we planned our wedding. I mean, we just so I would have a story. I could tell it if we have time, but really it was already just understood. But I had to tell him, I have this terrible disease where people didn't know, because I was always one of those folks that if you met me, I was happy, and I was happy, and I didn't let how my body felt determine how I felt emotionally. And people who are listening who have chronic pain probably can relate that you smile. That's just how your body feels. And there's no reason to even talk about it. That's just it. Okay, my body feels like this today. If I need to take a pill, whatever, I do it, and you just go live. So most people had no idea how sick I was. He saw me take medicine, but he didn't really have an understanding of what was going on. And so I had to really break it down for him that because of the kidney issues and the mini strokes I was experiencing, that I had pretty severe disease, and I was not expected to have a normal lifespan. I was expected to likely become disabled by my 40s. At the time, we were in our late 20s, and that I would never be able to have children, because between kidney failure and strokes, I probably wouldn't survive it. So you'd have to take care of me when I become disabled. I mean, it's not a pretty picture, but I still wanted that life. I just wanted him to know what he was getting into, right? And it didn't stop him. It didn't care about that. I mean, of course he cared, but it didn't hold him back. And it's interesting if you ever interview him about it, because I saw him pause for a second, and he said in his head, it was like endless of like, so I get emotional, but that like, why would I find the person I love and then be told that I can't keep her?
Yeah.
And I think it was especially hard for him because before me, his best friend in his whole world, his buddy that he was most connected to out of anyone else in the world, died of cancer a few years before I met him.
Mm.
So it was like, why would you be given another chance at that kind of like soul connection, and then you can't have it, which would, give a lot of people a reason to run.
Yeah.
I'm going to dab my tears, but like for a lot of folks, like, why would you just, no, I don't want to go through that. And so he said in his mind, he's spiraling, he's hurting. But there was no option for him. And he said, all I saw was a pause. And then he just said, I'd rather have a short life with you than a lifetime with anyone else. And if it's going to be a short life, it'll be the best dang life you could ever have. And I said, okay, yeah, let's do it. I want to get married. Yep. So like for me, And I think I wanted to feel everything. I wanted to accept love in my life. And a lot of times when I'm working with people who are very sick, they think they don't deserve love, or they're a burden to others. And I think you don't get to choose who loves you. And by pushing love away, you hurt that person. Like
Yeah.
it would have hurt Tom not to get to love me, just as much it would hurt him to lose me too, but you have to
Right.
let it in. And one of the reasons why when you get married, they say for better, for worse, for richer, and for poorer is because stuff happens, right? So you could marry someone healthy and then they could get sick, or marry someone rich and they can get poor. Or in Tom's case, you can marry someone sick and then they get healthy,
Yeah.
So what happened was I wanted to look great for our wedding, and I wanted to lose weight. I was eating hospital food, which is guaranteed to get you sick and overweight.
Mm-hmm.
you know, I was a vegetarian, and so I didn't eat meat, but I ate tons of eggs and cheese. In fact, almost every meal I ate eggs and cheese, and then processed crap and ranch dressing and dairy. And so he said, okay. He made sure to let me know that I was perfect and I didn't need to lose weight. He's a good man. He's like,
Yes.
he started there. You don't need to dig any, you don't need to change. And I said, no, I want this. I want this. I want to look great. Okay, if this is what you want. But at the time, he had not yet completed his full algorithm, and he was still using free range meat in his plan, which worked better than other more inflammatory meats, but still is inflammatory, but he didn't know that yet. What he knew is it worked for fitness. And I didn't eat meat. So he said, okay, I've never trained a vegetarian before. So we'll take out the meat and we'll put tofu instead, and everything else the same. And, high raw vegetables, the whole protocol as I teach it, water intake, all the stuff that I did. So I accidentally became plant-based / vegan, and I didn't even know it till later when I was like, oh, I didn't even know I was vegan. Only vegan I never met was in college, and he had a big ring in his nose, and I thought that it was really bizarre and extreme.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was an accident. I didn't know. But what happened was his algorithm worked. I lost tons of weight. In 3 months, I went from a size 11 to a size 3. I was ripped. I was strong, looked amazing. And for the first time, when I got my labs drawn right around that same time, I was like 3.5 months in, all my markers for lupus were negative, which had never happened. I'd been sick since I was 16. I was now 28. And any test, and I got tested every month because I was very scary to my doctors. And all of my markers were negative. My blood clots at the first test were borderline, but would never be something you treated. A month later, they retested because they thought it was a mistake, because you don't just suddenly have everything become normal. Even the protein in my urine was gone. My kidneys were normal. Blood, everything, ANA, dsDNA, all the antibodies. It was like it was somebody else's test. And we retested a month later, and then the antibodies weren't even borderline anymore for clots. They were gone. My cholesterol, which was high since I was 22, my doctor said it was genetic. Guess what? It was the cheese. My cholesterol was down to 156. And it'll be two weeks from now, will be 19 years since that test. And I have never had a relapse. I'm now 47 and change. I'll be 48 in February. And I have never had a relapse in 19 years. I was able to have 2 children. I have never had a relapse in my arthritis or any of my symptoms. I do not have rashes. I have no symptoms of lupus. I have amazing energy. And to be almost 50 and have perfect, amazing health, when as a teenager through my 20s, I was chronically ill, is extraordinary. And so for my husband and I, it became very apparent that it was something we did, especially after I had my son Solomon and I didn't relapse. And so we wanted to be in full integrity with people. And so we didn't want to just say, hey, just do this. It seemed to work. And that's what a lot of influencers do. I did this and I'm better. Well, in spite of it, because of it, I wanted to prove it wasn't just being in love that did it. Even though for 6 months in love with him, I still had lupus until I changed my diet. Sometimes people say that. So we wanted to test everything and understand what was going on a cellular level. And that's when we discovered that we'd accidentally created this protocol that was the most anti-inflammatory. And it really was a protocol that accelerated cellular repair and optimal immune function by accident. And then even then, when we discovered that on paper, we went back and we started recruiting test subjects for free. Like I gave a talk at the Lupus Foundation, or it wasn't Lupus LA asked me to give a talk. Someone from Lupus LA asked me to give a talk for a wellness event. And I was like, hey, can I give you a diet for free and see what happens? And only when we proved that it worked for everyone that we tested did we then release it to the public? So my book about lupus came out in 2015. I have classes online, and I will do spurts of just putting them out there to free to try to like get people excited and go watch them. Right now that's happening. I give free coaching to the public, but we wanted to make sure that if this is what it took to get well and it works, that this should be something that everyone in the public has access to. And so we released it to the public. And since then, it's just been, it's not even a whirlwind. It is absolutely astonishing. We've just had people every day writing us messages saying, hey, I did your program, I read your book, or I read free stuff online, or I watched your classes, and I no longer have lupus, MS, Sjogren's, diabetes. Hey, you just told me your anemia is gone. Colitis, we reversed Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis. So, we work with people who need our help to get it right and get better, but we never hold anything back about what we do from the public. We are fully transparent with the hopes that everyone possible will just listen to us, apply what we teach. And for me, save their life. And for my husband, save their wife, and give them a chance at really living the life they really want to live.
And just to clarify for people, it's like, you're not in remission. Your lupus is gone.
Yeah, I don't have lupus according to every measurement. So still, according to FDA medical guidelines, lupus is considered incurable, which is why I don't even use the word cure, because that just starts a fight that I'm not interested in having.
Right.
So I say it's reversed because it's not there. But if you were just to take me in and examine me and run tests, I do not have any signs, symptoms, or indicators of lupus, and I have not for 19 years. So I would say I do not have lupus. It was funny though, when I got pregnant with my first son, my OBGYN was asking me my health history. And at that point, I'd been lupus free for 4 years. And I said, well, I used to have lupus. And she goes, you can't used to have lupus. Yeah. You have lupus. And so she was freaking out because their insurance goes up when they treat people with lupus. I mean, it is very scary because they can get into a flare. They can have strokes. It's a very scary illness for them to have someone through a pregnancy. She sent me to the high risk OB. And he sent me back. He goes, this woman's healthy. There is no sign of any kind of problem here. I'm not going to follow her. And so my OB had to follow me and test. She had me coming in every month for labs, tests, and no flare-ups, no relapse, healthy pregnancy, healthy birth, healthy baby. So it's just been really phenomenal. So yeah, I do not have disease anymore. And that's what happens to my clients too. I mean, I just released a case series a few months back in Frontiers magazine. Frontiers Journal is one of the most downloaded journals in the world. And it was a case series of people that I treated that had lupus and Sjogren's, who had active symptoms of disease on medications, seriously ill, symptomatic on medicines. All of them were symptom-free within 2 to 6 weeks working with me in something I call rapid recovery, where they have to work with me every day. So I make sure they get it right and they get better, right? So they can feel my breath on their neck every single day. What did you eat? How did you sleep? How are you feeling? I help them with everything. Yeah. And so those folks, all of them were symptom-free within 2 to 6 weeks. And all of them had been taken off their medications by their rheumatologists, not by me, and had remained symptom-free off all medications, one for 4 years, 6 years, one almost 8 years, without having to ever have a relapse or ever need medications again. One of them has had 2 children since then and still no relapse. So it is reproducible. And, if we were not being limited by medical literature and starting fights, most people would call that a cure. Yeah. I just spoke at a conference last weekend with 1,000 doctors in attendance between in person and online. And all of them are like, this is astounding, overwhelming. I was just presenting case after case after case. And that's what they were writing to me. There's a message group within the conference. They're like, this is an overwhelming presentation of results. Like, it's astonishing. And so, yeah, if there was a pill that could do what nutrition can, they would call it a cure. But since it's eating differently, they don't. And so we just call it disease reversal. You went forward, you went backwards, and you got back to health. And for most folks, better health than they ever had before they got sick. I know for myself, definitely.
Absolutely. So let's tell people, tell people about the protocol. I know that there's 6 steps to it. Whenever I think about your protocol, I think most people think like just the smoothie, but there's actually 6 aspects to it that really are the whole protocol. So
right. So
that.
Again, My spouse is someone who's all about systems and algorithms.
He's a Virgo.
So yeah, so he's the one who's like, we have to break it into steps and make it something people can easily understand and follow step by step, which I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Listen, I'm a biologist and my minor was in creative writing, so for me, it's like, if I talk long enough, you'll get it. And he's like, no, steps. So 6 steps for reversing disease with supermarket foods. That's what Goodbye Lupus is about, which is my first book, is about my story and the 6 steps to reversing disease. So the first 3 steps are really about stop getting sicker, right? If you want to get healthy, stop getting sicker. Just like if you're trying to lose weight, stop getting fatter, right? Like you have to stop doing the things that's causing the problem. And a lot of times people will say, well, what about other factors besides food? There are, for sure. Stress is something, and I talk about that in my second book, Goodbye Autoimmune Disease, which is all about the emotional work and self-sabotage and depression and anxiety, as well as case studies in reversing disease. But the nutrition part is essential for your recovery. Okay, so the first 3 steps are to stop getting sicker. And what we have found and been able to reproducibly show, especially in people who decide to test it once they get better and try eating their old way again, animal products, so meat, dairy, eggs, processed items. So anything that has, that you have to look at for an expiration date, it has chemicals in it, it has a shelf life, right? And oils, especially processed oils, but anything from saturated fats, which are really in that animal fat range, but also in things like palm oil, and all the different oils people use for cooking. The only exception are oils specifically that I recommend, like flax oil or chia oil, which is a totally different healing category. But those, the things I just mentioned, animal products, oils, processed items, that is actually really what the components are of the standard Western diet. That's what people are eating all day. They're eating a protein bar, they're eating a yogurt, which people are usually shocked by that. I was just reviewing a few months ago a study that came out showing that processed foods, I don't like to use the word foods, processed items, that even one serving a day increased people's risk of death, dementia, diabetes, autoimmune disease, kidney, heart disease. One serving a day. The average American is 5 to 6 servings a day. Right? But one of the things that shocked people is the category of processed foods that testing included things like yogurt, which people think is healthy, and it's not just because it's an animal product, but it is processed. Baby formula, processed, baby foods. If you have to call it baby food and it's in a jar with a shelf life, that's processed. Baby food is an avocado. That's right. So people are usually shocked by how much goes into it. But most Americans are just eating, processed diet. They're eating that protein bar or that protein shake, their yogurt, then they're eating, a meat and cheese sandwich, and then they're having some kind of processed pasta or meat or dairy for dinner. They might be adding some more animal products or a glass of milk or something. And so most people have no idea that they're progressively poisoning themselves all day long.
Yep.
And that is the reason that they're staying sick. It's kind of like a study that was done a while back on smokers that found that just overnight while they're sleeping, their lung tissue had actually repaired some damage. But the first cigarette undid the healing, like scratching a scab off. That our bodies are trying to repair themselves every day. But if you are scratching off those scabs every time you open your mouth and put more stuff in, then you are actually creating that chronic disease. And chronic disease is man-made. This is not something that happens in nature. You do not see rheumatoid arthritis in animals in nature. The only time you see it is animals humans take care of. Humans take care of an animal, they get diabetes, heart disease, tumors, and arthritis. But in nature, they don't, because they're eating the right diet. So it's very important for people to understand that. Now, for a lot of folks, though, it's very difficult for them to get rid of everything they eat. So you can, even though it's steps 1 through 6, you can start on step 4. So steps 4, 5, and 6 are about the foods that we've discovered that are necessary for cellular repair. And the more you eat of those foods, those are actual foods, the faster your cellular function improves itself, the faster you're able to heal, the faster your immune system comes back to an optimal state where it can attack bacteria and viruses instead of attacking your own organs, for example. And that also works for allergies. People who have allergies, their body's overreacting to stimuli that's actually not toxic. but yet they might have trouble with getting the flu all the time. And I have someone in my rapid recovery group right now. She fought me in the first week because I made her give up honey. It's an animal product and it's pure sugar. And she thought honey was helping her allergies because nothing else had worked anymore. All the allergy medicines didn't work. And we just finished last week. We were doing our week 5 meeting, and she goes, I don't have allergies anymore, and I don't need allergy medicine. I can't believe it, because that's inflammatory immune response too. So, so when people add these things that they're missing, now we've got some of the antidote on board. So 4, 5, and 6 are those foods. So 4, we look at the foods that have the nutrition, the vitamins, minerals, antioxidants that your body needs to repair itself. And so the best dosage you get of those comes in cruciferous vegetables. Cruciferous vegetables have more nutrition in them than if you ate a rainbow of everything else available. It is really, really nutrition dense. And so a lot of folks, they don't want to eat those. You know, kale is usually like what decorates a buffet, but nobody wants to put on their plate. It is really, really powerful. So cruciferous vegetables, if people can have like a pound a day of cruciferous vegetables, or if you're not listening to the US, 454 grams a day, whether you have it in a green smoothie or you throw it into your salad, if you have broccoli and dip it in guacamole, however you want to do that, now you start talking about real things that can keep a doctor away. Second step is adding in omega-3 fatty acids. People are omega-3 deficient. Listen, if you never ate animal products or oils or processed items, you could get the omega-3s you need even in your salad. But because people are so doused in inflammatory omega-6 from oils, animal products, that it's the balance, the ratio of 6-3 that affects people's immune function. And so people are so devastatingly malnourished from omega-3. I hypernourish them with that. So hypernourishment is what I call the intentional overdose of nutrition, right? So we got the cruciferous vegetables, flax seeds and chia seeds for omega-3. You can start out with a handful a day of flax or chia, like in a green smoothie. We have free recipes at smoothieshred.com that you could just look at and copy. If you're sick, have more, half cup a day. If that makes you too bloated, you could use a few tablespoons of flaxseed oil, cold press, but that will start getting the inflammation down. It also improves brain function. It also improves metabolism, cellular communication, cellular repair. And then the final step that everybody forgets is very important is water intake. So when people are dehydrated, and I was just teaching the doctors this at the conference over the weekend, because doctors never think about it, nor are they taught about it. I wasn't taught about this in medical school, is that even mild amounts of dehydration is associated with not a slower metabolism and difficulty losing weight, an immediate decrease in cognitive function and working memory, fatigue, constipation, kidney stones, gallstones, diabetes, hyperglycemia, and ketoacidosis, all sorts of illnesses that they normally wouldn't even associate with what people are consuming, heart disease, blood pressure, and actually is related to severe amounts of dehydration. And so one of the other parts of hypernourishment is making sure people get enough water. And so typically, unless they've got severe issues like kidney failure or heart failure, I get them on 96 ounces of water a day. If they do have kidney failure, heart failure, or other water restriction, they have chronic hyponatremia, I adjust those amounts. And really for all of it, you know, the average healthy person or person who doesn't have food or water restriction can just dive in. I have published papers on reversing kidney failure, getting someone off the transplant in 6 weeks, doubling her kidney function. She was not on that full amount of food that I just told you because her kidneys would have not been able to handle it, and her potassium would have spiked and her sodium would have dropped. So I adjust the plan to help people who have those kind of issues. But generally speaking, that would be the goal, would be get people on those amounts of food or more. And what happens is immediately they start feeling good energy, inflammation comes down, the rings can fit back on the fingers again, all different kinds of blood markers come around. And the more people's diets come from the healthy healing foods and the less that comes from the animal products, the healthier they get. And so, you know, how strict or aggressive people need to be just depends on their current health. For optimal health, I do recommend people stick with a plant-based diet high in the hypernourishment. And by the way, the vegetables in hypernourishment are uncooked raw vegetables. I was able to show the docs studies that prove that some of the most vital nutrients like sulforaphane, which fights cancer, vitamin C, and other nutrients are destroyed even by mild amounts of steaming. So if you want to get the benefits, you eat those raw. And if you are eating cooked foods, that they come from plants, they're not processed, you're not doused in oil. And when people do that, they can get well and stay well. And we know that that's a fact because we have thousands of studies now and people all over the world who've been able to do that, just like yourself. We never met before, and yet you were able to apply those principles and heal something that you've had your whole life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was so grateful because One of the things I love about you, Dr. Goldner, is that you want people to get healthy, and you're not trying to push like your personal agenda or whatever. And I've worked with health people that like, they want you to be this certain way. They're kind of like emotionally attached to it. And for me, it's like the anemia had gotten really bad. I was like on borderline going to need blood transfusions. And my doctor and everybody was saying to me, you got to eat meat, because I was a 20-year vegetarian. And I actually think we need to come up with better terms than like vegetarian, because I was a vegetarian, but I was really a carbotarian. I was eating, pizza and stuff like that. And as I look back on it, I was like, oh, I was eating a lot of processed stuff now that I think about it. And that's really what was going on. So I didn't know what to do. I was so sick. I did start eating meat for like 2 years. And it was heartbreaking for me to do it, because I didn't want to do it, but I kept telling myself, this is your medicine. This is your medicine. I did the whole AIP paleo thing, kind of like when you took chemo. Like for me, it was like, all right, I think at that time, it probably did save my life on some level. But then I kind of flatlined, and I heard one of your Wednesday calls where you said, I've never seen anybody heal on an animal diet. I've seen people get better, but I've never heard them heal. And I was like, that's me. That's me. It's like I got better, but then I stopped getting better. And then I started getting other symptoms. My cholesterol went crazy. And that's when I started doing your protocol. And I want to just say to everybody, I did not do like this 100% perfect. I was not perfect. I started doing your hypernourishment, which is basically adding things in. I didn't go the whole full, goodbye autoimmune. I didn't do the whole raw thing. It's like I started letting go of meat, and then I let go of chicken, and I've just recently let go of fish, and I'm starting to bring it back in. But I've been adding in my smoothie. I have my smoothie with me right here. Been having that every day, and my symptoms gone.
Yeah.
Symptoms are gone.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that sometimes we solve some problems while creating others, and that means it's not optimal, right? Remember Tom's algorithms, right? There's one best solution. And so if your anemia is getting better, but your arteries are getting clogged with cholesterol, that's not the answer. We don't want to treat anemia for a stroke, right? So that's not the right algorithm. And unfortunately, that's how doctors are trained, is they're trained to fix numbers. So it's one of the reasons why they feel so comfortable with things like medications, right? It's like, okay, if your blood pressure is too high, we can burst a blood vessel in the brain, the small blood vessels. Now you have a bleeding stroke and you die. So we need to keep blood pressure lower. So they give you medicine to lower your blood pressure. The problem is, the reason your blood pressure is high is because your arteries are so rigid and full of fats that in order for your heart to get the blood that your body needs to survive to all of the parts of your body, it needs to increase the force of which it contracts to push it. Because if you're trying to push blood through a narrow artery that's rigid, you need a lot more force than if you have a nice relaxed open artery, right? So your heart is increasing the pressure to try to get the blood through those narrow rigid arteries, right? And that pressure is your blood pressure. But if the pressure is that high, then even though that's what's needed to get through the rigid arteries, those little fragile arteries at the end, like in your head, could burst open. So they lower your blood pressure with a medication, but now you're getting less blood and oxygen to your body, which makes people feel very tired and run down. If anyone's listening right now is like, oh my God, I'm on blood pressure medicine, I'm exhausted. Yeah, you're not getting enough blood. You're not getting enough oxygen, but the doctor's happy because the number's good now. Look, you're now down to 115/80. You're safe from a stroke. But the problem is you're still clogging up your arteries, which means you're going to need higher doses of medicine over time. And that's going to affect your kidney function and all of these other things. And so people are on paper looking fine on their blood pressure number, and they're getting sicker and sicker. And so your doctor kind of did that one. Oh, you have anemia, let's try to get you more iron. Meat is high in iron, let's give you meat. Meanwhile, your blood pressure is probably going up, your cholesterol is going up, and you're getting sicker while fixing one number. That is not how you get someone healthy, right? And I've had a lot of folks who told me, I have anemia, I can't do a plant-based diet. Said that's not true. In fact, your anemia will probably go away, right? And so listen, if you need iron, take an iron supplement. Don't eat meat and then give yourself heart disease, right? Let's fix the iron, and then let's fix whatever the cause is. And so you were saying that you had, absorption issues because of bowel inflammation. Well, when you eat the right food, the inflammation goes down and then you absorb nutrition better. And there you go, right? So for me, it's like, let's actually solve the problem, right? Because, there was one cartoon I saw that really represented modern medicine so perfectly. And it's a cartoon where you see a sink overflowing and the faucet's on and there's a guy mopping. That's modern medicine. All the doctors have mops and they're trying to keep the floor dry. The faucet's on, the faucet's on, right? So all I'm saying is we can shut off the faucet. And what happens is when you shut off the faucet, now we can mop it up and we're never going to have that problem again. And so for a lot of folks, they're taking medicine when they meet me. I'm not anti-medicine. I still prescribe for people who need it, but it is a temporary fix to keep you safe while we turn the faucet off. Once the faucet's off, then people are able to come off of those medicines and rediscover their health. Listen, some folks might need something, especially like regular basis, I help people reverse thyroid disease, specifically Hashimoto's. Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease that attacks the thyroid. So if we catch it early enough, or if they're able to, usually within the first few weeks, they have to lower their thyroid medicine because their body starts producing it again. And they start getting symptoms of hyperthyroid and their TSH starts to get really low. But for some folks, we can prove the antibodies are gone and they don't have Hashimoto's anymore, but their thyroid's been pretty much destroyed by the disease. So they still need a thyroid hormone. But what's cool is they no longer have symptoms. The hormone works because the autoimmune disease is gone. And for a lot of folks, even over time, they still continue to lower that thyroid hormone dose. I call it zombie thyroid syndrome. That it's just, we thought the thyroid's dead and then yet it starts to come back. So, medicines are something that we can use to mop up the mess and to try to keep people alive, but they don't shut off the faucet. When you change what you eat, that's the path to actual wellness, which is what people really want. Because when you're on the medicines, it's not like you feel good. You can feel that you're not really right, but when you actually get healthy, that's a difference that you can feel.
Well, this is a question I've been wanting to ask you, and I bet you a lot of people are thinking about this too, is most doctors have no clue about nutrition and might even be actively hostile towards people when they bring up like anything alternative. What do you recommend for people? Because it's important to get your blood. It's important to work with somebody if they're not able to work with you, although we're going to talk about how they can work with you in just a second. What do you recommend for people to either find a good doctor or work with a doctor while they're also wanting to do hypernourishment or something like that?
Well, one, you have to know what you're hiring your doctor for, right? You're hiring your doctor to find out what medical treatments are available for what you are dealing with, right? For your symptoms, for your issues. It's important when you talk to your doctor to also ask, like, what are the risks and side effects of taking it? And what are the risks and side effects of not taking it? Sometimes I see people not taking medicine who really should because they're so afraid of side effects and they're forgetting the fact that there's a side effect of not taking it, right? If you have a disease that's currently killing you and you're not eating right yet, if you're not taking medicine and you're not eating right, you're choosing to be sick, and that could be dangerous, right? Mm-hmm. So make sure you have good conversations with your doctor. What does this do? What would happen what are possible things that could happen if I take it? What are possible things that can happen if I don't take it? And you make the decision that's best for you in that moment. There are a lot of doctors that are open to this, and a lot of doctors who follow me and come to me. I mean, right now I'm doing rapid recovery programs where I work with people every day. I have private versions of that for 4 weeks. And currently I'm working with a doctor and a nurse. When doctors and nurses get sick, guess who doesn't like to take medicines?
Yeah.
Those guys. But they also know when they listen to me and they read my books and they read my studies, they know that I'm doing real science here, that I'm not kind of an influencer. Right? Yeah. Just kind of saying stuff. And so they know my results. They know that they understand what I'm doing. And so if they're going to get help, they come to me. But that's also been great because then they get better and go out and take care of other people. So I even had a rheumatologist come to see me after 3 of her patients healed on my program. And so she didn't know anything about me. And she goes, I don't understand what happened with your lupus. Oh, I'm following Dr. Goldner. She has a book about lupus. And then after the 3rd one, she goes, I have lupus too. And she made an appointment. She said,
wow.
Okay. So now there's a rheumatologist who knows how to do this, right? So it's changing for the better. I've taught medical schools. As I said, I just taught a conference with 1,000 doctors in attendance who are learning it. So it is a different landscape than it was even 10 years ago. But if you try to find a doctor who's open at least and say, hey, I am working on a nutrition plan that is designed by a physician that can help me with my inflammation, help me with my disease. So I'd love to be able to, I want you to be on board. If you need to have things tracked, you have someone who can track it. Most primary care doctors are very interested, and they will track your cholesterol before and after, your A1C before and after, your blood pressures and all that kind of stuff. And also that way you can have someone to call if you need a change. Most people with high blood pressure need to reduce or stop medications within 3 weeks. You can't take blood pressure on medicine on a low blood pressure. You can pass out, right? People on blood sugar medicines usually have to reduce their medications also within 3 to 4 weeks. So you have to have someone on board so that when you take your measurement, you can call your doctor and say, hey, if my blood pressure is 115/70, should I be taking my medicine or not, right? They will say no. If my blood sugar is 90, should I be taking my blood sugar medicine, or 75? So it is important, especially if you're taking medicine, to have someone on board and just to let them know what you're doing. And if you can find someone who is excited about it, that's great. If not, remember your doctor's a consultant. And so you can say, listen, I understand that you don't know about nutrition or understand about it. All I need is someone who understands and knows what I'm doing while you prescribe and I follow this. If you go to an acupuncturist, expect needles. If you go to a chiropractor, expect them to work on your back. If you go to a doctor, expect procedures and medications, but you are the one that's really in charge of deciding what works for you and how you want to manage all these consultants.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much. It's just
Absolutely.
really important, really, really important for people to be advocates for themselves. So I know there's a really big emotional piece because there's all this great information, but then people run into resistance. And this is where I think if people get to work with you, it's so helpful to be able to address not just the food piece of it, but also everything that gets in the way of actually taking care of yourself and prioritizing yourself. So tell us how people work with you, Rapid Recovery. Tell us what that's about and what they can do.
So, listen, I always put out the information, and
a lot of information.
Yeah. And for people to run with it, that's my goal. That is my goal, is that this just becomes commonplace. But there are definitely people who need extra help. People I'm working with right now, they're dealing with emotional stress, bad relationships, husband issues, deaths in the family, all sorts of really difficult things that create inflammation and stress. A lot of folks have food addictions where they just can't stick with it. There's people with organ failure. I've helped people get off the lung transplant list, kidney transplant list, and liver transplant list, right? Amazing. So there are people with organ issues. If you have organs that are failing, I actually recommend you do work with me, because you don't want to waste time if you accidentally get it wrong. If there's one time to invest in your health, it's when your organs are failing. This is, the moment.
Yeah.
But then there's, people with food addictions and people who have issues with self-sabotage. I'm also a trauma specialist. So for a lot of folks, their stress and in their emotional distress is keeping them sick. So when people work with me, if you make an appointment, I spend 75 minutes to get to know you, so I can give you a plan that's personal to you for your nutrition, but also for your lifestyle, for your moods, for everything else. The most popular thing I do is rapid recovery. Most people, they want to meet with me, get better, and then not need me again or anybody else. And that's actually my favorite, because I like to hold people's hand to make sure that they're well, and then let them free and go live your life. That, to me, that is really my purpose. It's not about labs. It's about people living their purpose. So Rapid Recovery is a program where I work with people every day, and I monitor everything: what they eat, how they sleep, their nutrition intake, or not just their nutrition intake, but like how it affects their labs. So if they have organ issues, for example, their moods, their thoughts. We have a rapid recovery group that's 6 weeks. And actually, we're having the last group of the year, October 11th. We're going to take some time off for our family, because in our rapid recovery group, it's 6 weeks, and we work with people every day. We don't take a day off, not on the weekends. It's 7 days a week, round the clock. And so it's 6 weeks. And we have some people who come in who just want to learn better and live better. And then other folks who are literally on dialysis, and it's open to anyone who's motivated. But it is a 6-week program. We work with people every day. And so a lot of the results that I publish come from that group, because I can actually show exactly what someone did every day. And when you're publishing things for doctors, it's good to have the data. But most of the results that you see people, bragging about online, where their symptoms were gone in a matter of weeks, that comes from my rapid recovery program. So like right now we're finishing up a group where we have someone who's 90% better from MS, no longer using a cane, says she would never even know she had it. Another person who thought she just had back problems from her lumbar disc issues, who now can sit in a car for 5 hours with no pain at all. Someone who's completely lupus free, no lupus symptoms at all. Someone whose migraines went away. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And so it's a fabulous program where I work with people so every person in the group gets personal help, but we do group meetings together for me to coach them and encourage them and help them work through their issues. So 6-week rapid recovery group's my most popular thing. And like I said, my last group starts October 11th. So if you're listening to this and it's before October 11th, 2024, then that group would be the last one of this year. There's limited spaces, but as of the time we're chatting, we have spaces. After that, it'll start January 2025 again. We do private rapid recovery, which is weeks one-on-one, where you just can call me as much as you want every day for 28 days. And I check over same level of intensity of checking over everything you eat and everything you're feeling, but it's private phone calls instead of group calls. But that we do, my husband and I do them. We both take people on because we have to. I mean, he basically has walked away from his career to be a part of just supporting folks who come to us because they need that helping hand. And he was my coach, and so he coaches people as well. He coaches a lot of kids. He's had so many 8 and 9-year-olds with autoimmune disease, that we've helped get better, which is pretty amazing. So yeah. So if you want to work with us, appointments and rapid recovery are the ways that we work with people. And that's at goodbyelupus.com. People can enroll in that. But they can also get, when you release this, we'll give you a link tree where there's tons of free resources and low cost resources. We have recipes, we have classes, we have all sorts of things to help people who really want to get started on their own or are able to do it fully on their own.
Yeah. So goodbyelupus.com. That's the hub. That's where they can find out most everything that's going on there. Awesome.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, any last thoughts you want to share with us before we wrap up today?
Goodness. Well, I guess since your show's about miracles, what I would say is just never give up before your miracle happens. Yeah. One thing that I learned from people, especially, working with people every day, there's sometimes in my rapid recovery group, it's 42 days, 6 weeks is 42 days. I have seen people who thought it wasn't working and on day 42 woke up and pain-free. Right? That sometimes people can get frustrated or can have setbacks and they want to give up. The only time you fail is when you give up. So whatever it takes on each given day, you start again and you do your best and you just never give up until you get your miracle.
Beautiful. I love that so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Goldner. I'm so, so grateful for you and for everything that comes through you. You're such a channel of grace on the planet. And I'm really, really grateful. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure.
All right, my friend. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to the Magnify Your Miracles podcast. If you did enjoy this episode and you know somebody that could really benefit from it, please share it with your friends, your family, and on social media. And until we see you next time, remember that your miracle is already here. Bye-bye.